Voice is cracking. Hi, Rohit. I wonder if you can hear me. Can you hear me, Rohit?
Yes, I can hear you. Good morning.
Okay. I was just checking.
Good morning, Bobby.
Hello, Tutu. Good morning. We are supposed to unmute it or mute it.
Everybody should remain mute right now.
Mute it.
It's muted right now. That's you. I am opening your video. That's you. हो जाएगा तो बस इसको बंद कर देना. If you want, you can wear these. इसमें स्पीकर भी है. ये वाले पहन लो. इसमें स्पीकर भी. ये बात. Oh, why is it everyone? Shouldn't I try it? Don't know my way around all this here. Oh, I should change it here. Okay. Right.
Hi, Bridge.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Hello, I'm General Gupta, Chairman Intact.
Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
Sir? Yeah, fine.
I'm so glad you had acceded to our request.
No, it's a privilege for me.
It would be wonderful to have you on the team.
Where is that? Where is the settings page on this?
There's some technical issues. We're just trying to get them resolved. So please bear with us for a couple of minutes.
करो नेम पेज करो. Exit full screen दूंगा.
Good morning, everyone. I am Ananya Nanda. I am Mr. Suresh Mehra's granddaughter, great granddaughter of Mr. S.T. Mehra, daughter of Mrs. Samita Mehra and Commander Gautam Nanda, and niece of Mr. Sumad Mehra. So we're just going to start in 5 minutes. We'll just give 5 minutes more to people who'd like to join. So yeah, thank you. Until then, please mute your mics. Thank you so much.
And I'll take it up from here, Ananya.
Yes. There are 11 people. Okay, got it.
वो कहाँ है? सर नहीं दिख रहा है.
आपको कर दिया. कर दिया. वो इसका प्रॉब्लम हो रहा था. चारू जी को पता है.
नमस्कार तारिक भाई.
Namaskar. Hello, how are you? Oh, hello. How are you?
Hello Ranjana.
ये किसका है?
Hi. Good to see you तारिक भाई. Congratulations.
चलिए हमें भी बहुत अच्छा लगा. Very good to see everybody. तो अभी are we a bit late or something like that?
No, it's just 11:04.
मार्च
sir.
में
We
प्लान
can
किया
start
था
in
और
another
देखिए
5
अब कहाँ
minutes.
पर हम लोग आए.
We can start in another 5 minutes, sir.
Okay, so why is the delay?
Ananya says we should wait for some more people to join in.
Okay.
Tariq bhai, how are your eyes?
जनरल साहब
दिख रहा हूँ.
बिल्कुल ठीक है जनरल साहब. How are you, sir?
Sorry, but can we
I've joined in as desired.
please
Nice to see you.
mute our mics because it's going to create echo and other.
General Sahab, I hope you remember me.
I remember you.
It's an old association with intact.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, can we all please mute our mics? Request you all to please mute your mics. Otherwise, there'll be technical glitches. It'll hang. Everybody will.
Hello, Ananya.
Hello.
वो किताब दे दो मैनचेस्टर.
So we are 20 to 5 right now. We'll wait for. Sorry, no, we're not. We're about 50. So I think we should start. So Charuji, over to you.
Should we start at 11:10? Let's give people 4 minutes to settle down.
What you're doing, Vishu?
Right. I think we should start. Let's go ahead.
All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage,
So can the
Yeah.
host please mute everybody?
Yes, I do that, but I request if you could all please mute yourself, please. It's going to create cross frequency, and if that's a word, but I don't. Please mute yourselves. That's the only request for this on this. We'll give all of you turns to speak. So please, yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, Charuji.
Good morning, everybody. On behalf of Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage, I extend a warm welcome to our esteemed speakers and our valued guests. Indeed, it's a great pleasure to have our chairman of INTAC, retired Lieutenant General L.K. Gupta, sir. It was gracious of him to accept the offer to launch the book, The Manchester of the East, Rise and Fall of the Industry in Kanpur. It has been authored by Mr. S.P. Mehra. Mr. S.P. Mehra needs very little introduction as he is a very learned and an eminent personality of Kanpur. We have here with us his proud family who will give us an insight into the book and about the author. I hope all of you would like to own a copy of the book, which tells us about an important part of the history of Kanpur. So, without further ado, I would like to invite Mrs. Samita Nanda to give a presentation of the book and about the author. So, Mrs. Samita Nanda, over to you.
Thank you, Charu. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the book launch webinar organized by INTAC and the author's Parivar to officially release Manchester of the East, The Rise and Fall of Industry in Kanpur. About the events that happened a century ago, captured in this book by my grandfather, Suraj Prasad Mehra, better known as S.P. Mehra to the world, and Baba to me. Baba was born in Rosa, district Shahjahanpur, on 19th April 1911. After his father's family moved to Kanpur, he did his schooling from Guru Narayan Khatri High School, more popularly known as GNK, and subsequently from BNSD Inter College in 1931. He graduated from Sanatan Dharm College in 1933 and did his master's in French history in 1935. Simultaneously, he studied for a degree in law and was awarded scholarship for doing PhD in history. After obtaining a degree in law, he started his career as an apprentice under senior lawyer Kashinath Bhalla. Financial problems forced him to take up employment as a special correspondent with the Pioneer, as well the Statesman and the Times of India as an appointed correspondent. In 1940, he started his own newspaper, the Citizen Weekly. He founded other publications such as the Nagrik and the Civic Affairs, specializing in labor problems. Public administration was also among several other publications that he brought out. He authored a book on Kanpur's civic problems titled Kanpur's Civic Problems, which remains to date the only factual and in-depth study of the city's civic problems. Baba's passion for responsible citizenship made him councillor in the first municipal corporation of Kanpur and the secretary of the Congress Legislature Party in the municipal corporation. However, his honest reporting and outspokenness of governance after independence attracted the wrath of the establishment. His sense of justice and fair play earned him many enemies, but undeterred by victimization, he continued on his path of battling for betterment of the city and its institutions. He formed the Civic Trust to take up the cause of fighting civic ills in Kanpur. In 1960, he was invited by the State Department of the US government on a lecture tour of USA, where he was awarded honorary citizenship of the city of New Orleans. His love for history fueled him to create the Kanpur History Society that worked for many years for setting up a museum. He also invoked the support of INTAC, of which he was a permanent member, to save Kanpur's heritage monuments and buildings. Baba's quest for knowledge and information, displayed in his collection of historical documents and books, attracted many domestic and international authors. A prolific writer, he continued to contribute articles to journals and national newspapers. Before he took aim in 2010, Baba had drafted a raw account of events and incidents that were responsible for making Kanpur what it eventually became, which are seeing the light of day today because of his son and my father, Mr. Suresh Mehra's commitment to work on the raw manuscript. The final version that we have today is all his effort to complete his part.
Samita, you put yourself on mute. Samita, unmute. Samita, unmute. You're on mute.
I just did. I heard you. I'll just go back a bit. Before he took ill in 2010, Baba had drafted a raw account of events and incidents that were responsible for making Kanpur what it eventually became, which are seeing the light of day because of his son and my father, Mr. Suresh Mehra's commitment to work on the raw manuscript. The final version that we have today is all his effort to complete the work his father left unfinished. Credit also goes to Commander Gautam Nanda, Baba's grandson-in-law, and my husband, who doggedly pursued many publishers and finally brought Bloomsbury on board. The title of the book is inspired by Baba's detailed account when the British converted a terrible occurrence like war into an opportunity to transform the shape and size of a hamlet into a burgeoning town. The events and incidents that made this transformation possible are captured through the lens of the author. Baba takes us through this journey of Kanpur that begins with the establishment of a cantonment by the British till the end of the golden era of industry of Kanpur. Unfortunately, we will never know if the final version would meet Baba's approval. But the most important thing is that my father's commitment to working on the raw manuscript would make my grandfather extremely proud. And I can hear him say, "You see, I never doubted Suresh's capabilities." On that note, I welcome you all and hand over the next part of the presentation to my brother, Mr. Sumat Mehra. Thank you.
Just before that, we'd like to display a video that the family made, which Mrs. Samita Nanda also created. Just a second. I think the audio was a bit clear. There was music in the background, but
Yeah. I now request Mr. Sumat Mehra to welcome General Saab and invite him to launch the book officially.
Thank you. Namaskar. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody, depending on where you are. I'm Sumat. I'm the grandson of Mr. S.P. Mehra, son of Suresh Mehra. This is a proud occasion for us as a family for the launch of this book. And I have the great honor in welcoming our keynote speakers. The first one, as Charu mentioned, Major General retired L.K. Gupta. So before I do that, I'll just mention that as my sister Samita introduced, Baba was an inspiration and a mentor for many a folk and has had a special place in our hearts. We recently celebrated his life, and it's now 10 years since he left us at a ripe young age of 99. He has had a passionate association with history and organizations that support its preservation and recording, so that future generations can learn and benefit from it and hopefully not let history repeat itself. My dad, Suresh Mehra, is a silent operator. He completed the book, as Samita mentioned, but he chose to remain behind the scenes today as well and let his children bear the torch. And he's been an amazing writer himself. I consider him a historian in his own beautiful way. And we're trying to urge him to write his own personal side of the Mehra family at some point, with anecdotes of lives from various people and folks in Kanpur, where he spent 82 years of his life. So first, I'd like to welcome Major General L.K. Gupta, the chairman of INTAC. Major General Gupta has been an illustrious soldier and a decorated officer of the Indian Armed Forces. He's an honored general and is passionate about preserving India's culture and heritage. He's a life member of INTAC and was elected as its chairman in 2010. Under his chairmanship, INTAC has progressed by leaps and bounds and is today recognized as one of the world's largest heritage organizations, with over 190 chapters across the country. Major General Gupta's support to Kanpur has been instrumental in preservation of some historic buildings. For those of you who may recall the grounds of KEM Hall, King Edward Memorial, it was earmarked to be converted to a stilted parking lot by local authorities some time back, which would have destroyed this monumental building and its history. Major General Gupta and INTAC ensured that they put its support and resources behind it, behind the fight with the local government and the courts of law to keep it secure and intact. He revived it as a historic site with its ground restored and the building saved. He happens to have a special soft corner for Kanpur and its history, and was very well aligned with my grandfather's vision and dreams for the city of Kanpur. We welcome you, sir, to this book launch event. Thank you. Next, let me just go ahead and introduce everybody. I'd also like to welcome today Srimati Subhashini Ali. Subhashini Auntie, as I call her, needs no introduction from folks from my generation or earlier. But for the benefit of the youngsters, she's the daughter of the illustrious Colonel Prem Sehgal and Captain Lakshmi Sehgal, who are an integral part of the Indian National Army under Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. Born and brought up in Kanpur, she left briefly and later returned to the city in 1984 to make it her permanent residence once again. Subhashini ji has been a member of parliament in 1989, representing Kanpur, the only woman MP to have served in that position representing the CPIM party. While Subhashini ji was like a niece to my grandfather and may not have always agreed on political thinking, they always engaged in intense conversations due to their common love for the city and its well-being. And she's just like a family member. We are delighted to have her join us for this book launch as a member of our family to honor late Shri S.P. Mehra's publication. Thank you, Subhashini. Lastly, but not the least, I'd like to welcome also Shri Syed Tariq Ibrahim. Tariq Uncle, as I refer to him, has been a friend of the family as well for multiple generations and has been instrumental in the support to my father, Suresh Mehra, so as to make today's launch event possible. Tariq ji is the son of late Shri S.M. Ephraim, who was an IS officer and the third ADM of Kanpur in the 50s. He was a friend of my grandfather's. He's also the son-in-law of late Shri Mahmud Halim, in whose name today also stands the Halim College in Kanpur, that was built by his father, S.M. Bashir, also a good friend of Baba's. Although a chartered accountant by profession, Tariq ji has always had an immense passion for Kanpur and his proud heritage. He is the convener of INTAC's Kanpur chapter and continues to work hard to enable the preservation of heritage properties in and around the city. His most active project is the revival and preservation of the temples of Najafgarh, a little hamlet near Sarsaul, which is 30 kilometers from Kanpur towards Allahabad. It also has about 50 hectares of a lake, and his attempt, Tariq Ankul's attempt, is to make this into a tourist destination with historical impact. So I again welcome the esteemed guests for this virtual event, and would first like to invite Major General L.K. Gupta to please launch the book and address the audience. Thank you. Ananya, you might want to unmute, Colonel Sab.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Please carry
Yes.
on.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a very proud moment for me to be invited to this function for launch of the book of Sri S.P. Mehra Ji. I first met Sri S.P. Mehra Ji sometimes in the year 2001 and 2 when I came to Kanpur to launch the chapter, intact chapter at Kanpur. At that time, I had a meeting with Shri Mehra Ji, and we had a cup of tea in his study room, where we exchanged our thoughts as to how we could revive intact. And during the discussion, he shared the papers with me on the history of Kanpur and outline of this book as well. And I was indeed very, very enthused and very keen that this book should see the light of the day. And I'm indeed very, very happy that his children, everybody has worked together and made this book a reality. This book, which I'm showing, is I've gone through this book Ananya gave me, and it has a lot of lessons for us. Intact is working on a project to revive Bithur. We have documented Bithur. And as I just mentioned, revival of the lake at Bithur, we think will be very, very good for Kanpur. And that's the next project on which we are working. But main thing, I want to celebrate the publication of this book because it has a lot of lessons for not only for us, but also our future generations. Wishing all the best, and I hope that the family will take steps to bring up the
Major General, just a second. You just a second. Sorry for the interruption. Yes, sir. I think it's okay now. Could you please?
No, I think he's still mute.
Yeah, now it's fine.
No.
Yeah, please
Ladies
carry
and
on,
gentlemen,
sir.
I said I'm really very proud of the fact that the family took the initiative to publish this book, and I'm sure Mr. Mehra Ji has left behind, late Shri Mehra Ji, a lot of papers which needs to be researched and brought into the public domain. I'll be very happy that whatever help Intact can render in this regard, we will be very happy to be part of that project. Thank you very much. All the best.
Let us have a round of applause, everybody, for the book. And thank you, General Saab. I will now request Suhasini Ali ma'am, which obviously needs no introduction, like they would say in Kanpur, inka naam hi kafi hai. So I request her to give us a keynote address, please.
Ma'am, you'll have to increase your volume, ma'am. We can't. You're not audible.
Can't hear me?
I request everybody else.
Hear me now? Can you hear
Yes.
me now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I request everybody to please mute their mics. There are a few
disturbances.
please mute your mic, except ma'am.
Well, thank you very much to the Mehra family for having invited me here today. And it's very kind of them to say that I'm like a member of the family. Actually, many of us who have grown up in Kanpur with our friends, fathers and mothers being friends of each other, etc., we do feel like one big family, but there's still a lot that we didn't know about each other. And I was very thrilled when Suresh sent me a copy of the book because, as many of you may know, I had been very much involved with the trade union movement in Kanpur and especially with the unions in the textile mills. And actually, the book that Mehra Saab has written deals basically with the textile industry. And I would just like to remind all of you that, you know, industries have their own circular movements. And if we talk about Manchester, well, Manchester of today is also no longer an industrial hub because, very unfortunately, what are now called the sunset industries, that is the earliest industries, they were a lot of the money that they generated, a lot of the capital that they created were actually used by their owners to set up other industries, newer industries, and the old industries, which were the mother industries, like the textile industry of Kanpur and possibly the old textile industry of Manchester. They were neglected and they suffered from a very, I must say, stepmotherly treatment from various governments also. And perhaps there was something inherent in the production systems that they incorporated, which led to their decline because those production systems were not changed. Mehra Saab has given a wonderful description of the way in which the textile industry was set up. You talked about war being turned into opportunity. Well, it was actually the Civil War in America, very far away from our own shores, which stopped the supply of raw cotton to Manchester and other textile mills in England. And the British needed to augment their stocks desperately. And apparently, the area around Kanpur grew cotton, which it doesn't do anymore. But it was a major cotton growing area, and it's very hilarious to read in the book that suddenly the demand for Indian cotton went up so much. And this is something that we always say about capitalism, that when they need something, they leave no stone unturned to get it. And when they don't need it anymore, well, then they just spit you out like a gutli, use and throw. So that's what happened. Cotton was loaded onto elephants to get to the docks fast, to get aboard the boats fast, and even many huts that came in the way, they were trampled down by the elephants so that the cotton could reach the boats. This is very interesting. And the railway line had just started also, so some of it went by rail also. And it was a station master. This is a brilliant thing. It was a station master, as Mehra Saab tells us, who said, well, this is ridiculous. We cannot ship so much cotton. So why don't we have mills right here in Kanpur? We should have mills in Kanpur that can spin and weave this cotton. That will be much simpler than trying to send it on elephants and goodness knows what else all the way to England. And that's how the idea, he started a cotton exchange. The station master, I mean, it's amazing. And that cotton exchange actually laid the foundation for the textile industry in Kanpur. And what is very interesting is that there are 3 books actually. Mehra Saab's book gives completely different information about the development of the industry. And Zoe Yalan's book on the boxwalas gives a lot of details of the early development of Kanpur. And it's important to remember that Kanpur is a unique city in India, which doesn't have a very great history and a historical legacy of its own. It's a colonial city. It was a city that was built by the British for their very well-defined colonial needs and aims. And that is what is responsible for the birth and development of Kanpur. It's almost, I think, the only completely colonial city in India. And that's why I would request Gupta ji to preserve not only the old mandirs and bitur, but also to preserve the nature of Kanpur as a colonial city. And that's why even some of the factories, the beautiful brickwork that has been used in the factories, they look new even today. The Lalimli with its clock tower and many of the bungalows, they are deserving of preservation also, because I don't think you'll find this kind of brick architecture possibly anywhere else in India. It's a very interesting part of Kanpur's development. So that is how actually the foundation was laid for Kanpur to become an industrial city. It was the needs of the British, first of all for cotton, then for cotton goods, and also for leather goods, because you know that Kanpur was on the Ganga and it was not part of Awadh. And the British had their eye on Awadh. Kanpur was their launching pad for their takeover of Awadh, that means with its capital in Lucknow. So after the exile of Wajid Ali Shah, the Kanpur cantonment saw a lot of work, and the leather industry was set up as to supply
Boots to the army.
But you can still hear me, right?
We hear you.
Yeah, okay. So then maybe I'll come back in a little while. I don't know. But anyway, you can hear me. So the leather industry was actually set up then to provide the straps, leather straps, and other things that the army needed. And those years, just pre-mutiny, saw a lot of development in Kanpur. Canvas was also woven there. There's an area in Kanpur called Faithful Ganj. It was named Faithful Ganj by the British because it was an area of Muslim weavers that remained loyal to the British even during the years of the mutiny. And you know, Kanpur was a center of the revolt against the British. Since it was a cantonment, so there were a lot of Indian soldiers who were part of that revolt. Anyway, that's another very interesting part of Kanpur's history, about which Mehra Saab and I had many discussions, and many books have been written about that too. So this was the reason for Kanpur's development. It was needed by the British, first of all, to launch their attack and their takeover of Awadh, which they did with Kanpur as a very big military base and supply base. And you know that during the revolt, Kanpur played its part, and there was the famous siege of Kanpur also. That church, it's a beautiful church in the cantonment that is still there, which was one of the places where the British army was actually besieged, and one of the big rescues took place there. Then there are other very important sites. One is the Massacre Ghat, and the British used these horror stories actually to build up tremendous public opinion in England and elsewhere, which they actually used to crush the Indian revolt in a very barbaric and terrible fashion. People were shot out from cannon, people were massacred, but the groundwork was prepared by the huge publicity that they gave to these two episodes. One was at Massacre Ghat, one was in the Nana Rao Park. About the Massacre Ghat, now much more information has come. It's not just such a dastardly deed by Nana Saab, who just killed the British officers whom he had promised to safeguard and help to reach safety. It's not as simple as that. Actually, at that time, hundreds and hundreds of villagers who were the victims of Neil's march from Allahabad to Kanpur, during which villagers on both sides of the Ganga were massacred cruelly by the British soldiers and the British army. So those survivors, those victims were rushing to Kanpur, and they were telling their tale, and they arrived at Massacre Ghat also, apparently at that time. And that was part of the reason that angry people siding with Nana Saab then attacked some of the British soldiers and their families who were actually being sent to safety. So there's a lot to learn if Kanpur is studied and Kanpur history is studied. And Mehra Saab's book is a very great contribution, because as someone who was on the other side, that means in the trade unions, it's very interesting for me to see how it was inner fighting between the owners themselves that was responsible for so much damage to the textile industry. I mean, the stories that he reveals. And I would like to say that my friend Suresh is a much softer and much more polite person than his father was. And I'm sure that if Mehra Saab had finished his own book, there would have been much more about the financial skullduggery, the cheating, the pulling down of each other, and the corruption that actually was responsible. And this was corruption by people in government who sided with all kinds of scams initiated by people like Ram Ratan Gupta and others. Maybe even more would have come out. But what is in Mehra Saab's book is actually very, very interesting, very, very fascinating, and probably is a story that is not really known and understood. And that is how much the owners themselves contribute to the downfall of industries. In America, the early capitalists used to be known as robber barons, and the ones in India were actually no better, whether they were the British owners of the BIC or the Indian owners of various factories, who obviously contributed a lot to setting up industry. Some of them, like the Singhania, especially, were also institution builders, but their inner fighting, their corruption, their greed was also responsible for a lot that happened during the decline of the textile industry, because the decline took place under the private ownership. The decline did not happen after nationalization. In fact, all the private mills were closed, and it is only the movement of the workers and the demands of the workers that were met by nationalization. And obviously, the government policies that followed nationalization also did not do much to actually revive the industry. They kept it alive somehow, kept paying the workers somehow, but they did not revive the industry by changing the counts, because only very thick cloth, markeen and saris for the rural areas around Kanpur were manufactured in the Kanpur textile mills, along with canvas for the military. So these items did not, I mean, there was no change in the product mix. And given the tremendous competition that the composite textile mills faced from the powerloom sector, it was not possible, because the powerloom sector, as you know, didn't pay any excise duty. They had very little labor legislation, and the people worked for 12 hours a day without decent wages. And against all of that, the composite textile mills, in which the unions had fought and managed to gain some kind of job security for the workers, payment of bonus, payment of dearness allowance, some sort of decent wages, and also quite a lot of housing was provided by the mills. And this is a very interesting story, and maybe I'll end here, otherwise I can go on talking about this forever. And I think, Ananya, you'll have to interrupt me and tell me when my time is done. But I'd just like to say that one very interesting aspect of Kanpur's development is that the British brought labor from all around Kanpur, the hinterland. And while some of those workers were Brahmins, actually most of the workers were from the scheduled caste communities. They were Ansaris from the Muslim community and Koris from the scheduled caste community. They came in very large numbers. And in the leather industry, the Chamar community came also in very large numbers. And actually, it is a fact that for many of these members of the scheduled caste, this was the first time in their history, I mean, taking their ancestors' history into account also, that they were given a semi-pakka house to live in, that they were given a semi-living wage, that their children could go to school, and that they had permanent jobs and job security. So actually, the Dalit movement, which of course we know more about Dr. Ambedkar, we know about Phule, but actually Kanpur played a very important role in the Dalit movement also. And one of the founders of the Dalit movement for social justice was actually Swami Achyutanand. He called himself Achyutanand, who is even today buried in Kanpur, but very little is known about him. But researchers have come and done a lot of research on this movement for social justice, which actually had its origins in Kanpur. Because as we all know, any movement for upliftment needs at least some members of that community who have had some education, some job security, and even some sort of financial independence. And Kanpur did see the rise of, in brushware, for example, of what would be an early Dalit millionaire who was Dr. Ambedkar's host in Kanpur also in 1946. So these are also very interesting aspects of Kanpur history. Many people have worked on them, many people have put them together. And we also have Chitra Joshi's wonderful book called Lost Worlds, which deals in great detail from the point of view of the workers with the decline of the textile industry and finally the closure of the mills. And she quotes workers as saying कि हमारी तो दुनिया खत्म हो गई. The world that we knew has now disappeared, and we can't expect to get even the benefits that we got as permanent workers of the textile mills from what lies in store for us. And that has turned out tragically to be very true. So I'm very excited by this book and by many of the things that it reveals. I'm also excited that it has probably given rise to a greater interest in Kanpur and the history of Kanpur. And I hope that that will make sure that more work and more research takes place. And people who are interested in research are always free to contact us. Suresh's house is also always open, mine is also. And, I think that a lot still needs to be done to link up all these stories. That is the rise of Kanpur and development as a colonial city, and its development as a leather and textile center, its role in the revolt of 1857, the part played by Kanpur people in the development of the social justice movement. And now I will just end by saying that while the textile industry remains closed all around us, the tannery and leather industry, most unfortunately, has been dealt a death blow just by the government and its attitude towards what should be done with members of what they call the cow family. It's a very great tragedy. There is no other reason, no labor problems, no fall in demand, no international reasons, but for just the effect of government policies, wrong government policies, I would say misguided government policies, and also very communal government policies. Our leather industry, which had really boomed in this city, today lies in ruins also. And lakhs of the poorest people in our society have been rendered unemployed. So these are all things for all of us to talk about and think about. And I hope that more interest will be generated. And this work that Mehra Saab, Zoe Yalan, and now Chitra Joshi have started will continue, and more wonderful research will be done on this very important city of Kanpur. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. We didn't want you to stop. You just made the history so interesting. We wanted to go on listening to you.
Don't do that with me, because I am very infamous for just going on and on and on. And this
But
is a
ma'am, you
subject
make
that's close to my
everything
heart.
sound so interesting also.
It is very interesting. It is very
Anyway,
interesting,
thank you,
very
ma'am.
exciting.
Ananya,
I
I'll
think-
now hand over to you for your tribute and the audience forum.
Right. Hello, everyone. I introduced myself when people were joining, so I'd like to take that liberty again. I am Ananya Nanda, the great-granddaughter of the author Mr. S.P. Mehra, granddaughter of Mr. Suresh Mehra and Mrs. Pramila Mehra, and daughter of Mrs. Samita Nanda and Commander Gautam Nanda, and niece of Mr. Sumad Mehra. All of the families present here. It's so good to hear such interesting narratives that have been discussed today, especially Major General who's spoken about certain facts about Kanpur. And as I was discussing with Tariq Uncle, who is the convener of INTAC in the Kanpur chapter, he was saying that the Kanpur University doesn't even have a history course. So that is something, so that is something that is, I don't know, it's horrific, at least for history and political science students. And okay, somebody asked me to spotlight myself. Okay, sorry. So I would just thank everybody and Subhashini ma'am. The first time that we spoke when I was inviting her for the event, I think the call lasted about 1.5 or 2 hours. So I was expecting that kind of a long speech today. Less of a speech, but more of very interesting facts, very interesting facts about caste, about class, all of the things that interest the younger generation as well as the older
The
generation.
first conference of the Communist Party of India was also held in Kanpur in 1925.
Right. Wow. Okay. So we would perfect. This is a shock. This is surprising again. I had written on the chat box for people to come ahead and come forward and talk about anything that you'd like to about the book, about Mr. S.P. Mehra. There's a friend of mine, Achyut Mishra. He's on the call. He's in Meerut currently, and I just sent him the book. I sent a lot of you have got books. So he sent me a message yesterday saying the book was lying on the desk, and my father just took a look. And he said that he knows Mr. Suresh Mehra, my grandfather, as well as Mr. S.P. Mehra. In fact, Nanu, Mr. Suresh Mehra, had helped him in his doctoral thesis. So
My father. He had helped my father.
Achyut's father. So it's just a small world. I think 1 out of 10 people are always from Kanpur. I go to networking events, matrimonials. But whenever I go, there's at least one person from Kanpur. I'm joking about the matrimonials. So I would call upon Mrs. Pramila Mehra, because Nanu doesn't want to talk. He's enjoying his tea in the corner, if you can see. So I would really like to call Nani and have her speak on behalf of Bade Nanu and Nanu. Nani, you have to unmute yourself. Yes.
Spotlight. You have to unmute her, Ananya.
She's still on mute, Ananya.
Unmute, is it okay?
Yeah, you're good now.
And now you
Go,
can-
Mom.
yeah. Go for it.
Is it okay?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Please speak.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Since my husband Suresh Mehra is indisposed, he has asked me to read out what he wanted to say. I'll read out what he wrote. I would like to express my gratitude to the people who helped in the publication of my father's book. It was unfortunate that he passed away, leaving the manuscript incomplete. A historian in his own right, it would have been a shame if the book had not seen the light of the day. My father, a journalist by profession, used a typewriter all his life, but in his late years, he used to write in longhand. It took me several years to decipher his handwriting and compile his work. Ravi Vishkarma, a software engineer working for IIT, helped me immensely in this task. I also owe to my friend Paul Brass, professor of political science in University of Washington, for his valuable inputs. Historian Manoj Kumar had worked with my father in the History Society of Kanpur. His help in initial editing of the compilation and the encouragement kept me going on the project. Finally, the project took wing after my daughter Samita's husband, Commander Gautam Nanda, took upon himself the job of finding a publisher. So that's what he wanted to say. And I would like on my own to add a bit that I learned a lot in this Mehra family about history and journalism, of which I had no idea, being a science student. So I'm really grateful for being with them. And I'd like to thank all of you for your contribution in every way. each and every one of you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Nani. Nani also keeps sharing anecdotes about Bade Nanu and how she came from a very relaxed family and came into this family of a historian, a reader, a disciplinarian, and Nanu, of course, also wasn't any of that. but Nani, you're on mute.
Suresh Mehra to write these anecdotes, which would be very interesting. But he hasn't obliged us yet.
Yes. So, so anybody else who would like to say something? Bridge uncle. Yes.
Ananya, you have to unmute him.
Bridge uncle, we can't hear you. You'll have to unmute yourself.
He's on mute, Ananya.
Ananya, you can unmute him.
I am. I've asked him to unmute himself. Yes.
Anchor didn't tell me anything.
Ananya, participants, and then find Bridge Uncle and unmute him.
हाँ?
Uncle, I'll just call you. Bridge uncle, I'll just call you and guide you. Until then, we'll have another speaker. All right?
Absolutely good.
Yes.
जो खरीदा
Like to.
ऐसा 56,000 रुपए बेंगलोर में 56,000.
Dad, would you like to say something regarding publishing and what the journey was and the publishing side?
Unmute him. Ananya.
Till you figure out how to unmute them.
Yes.
I'll take it on to. It was really interesting to hear about Kanpur, and like Ananya said, it's always very canny to meet up with people who are from Kanpur and how Kanpur has a history to be associated with. And when Dad put on this onus on me to see if this book could be published, I was skeptical about the whole thing myself. When I took it to the publishers, they were more than happy to hear about the story of Kanpur, and that's where the journey started. We connected with Bloomsbury, and a person was allocated to look into the transcript, which was edited by Dad and Samita, and a lot of work went into putting it into the shape which you are today seeing it. That's the time when the person in Goa actually called me up and informed that she had never heard of all these things from a place like Kanpur, because I don't think she ever visited a city anywhere in the north, and was quite impressed with what was being said in the book. And she, I think she got too attached to the whole history of Kanpur, which was being related in the book. And that's how it, I was getting feedback on every chapter, on every and the thing which she was reading, and it was being run through Dad and Samita for them to verify whether this is the right way to go or not. And finally, down the line, we were able to print it. And thank you everybody for appreciating the book, which has been written with a lot of effort and put together by my dad-in-law, Mr. Suresh Mehra. And let's hope, yes, Ananya, that's the book. And the cover was also a very interesting part. The cover came about because of the advertising background of my wife, Samita Nanda, where she figured out how it needs to be shown. And a very interesting thing about the cover is that if you see, there is a chimney in the background where the smoke is going away. Now, there's only an advertiser or a person with her understanding who can say that this is the rise and fall. So that's how you see the smoke going away and the chimney going down in size. So that's the rise and the fall of the Kanpur, Manchester of the East. So everything was thought about, everything was put into place with a lot of I would say, commitment to the whole project which went about. And I think now Ananya would have figured out how it has to be done, so we can take it forward from here. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being part of this session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dad. He's the one who suggested we should do it over the webinar because we planned it in March, right before the lockdown was announced. And while people started missing going to restaurants and movie theaters, we missed doing the book launch. So it was his idea to do it over the webinar. And now I would like everyone and just unmute Rij Uncle so that he can go ahead with his contribution. Just a second. Rij Uncle, I've asked you to unmute. I've asked you to unmute. You'll have to accept the request to.
Whenever it's free, can I also speak, please?
So who was that, Uncle?
This is Sanjeev Bobby Kapoor.
Right, Uncle. So, all right, just a second. I cannot sort of press on his mic. I have to ask him to unmute and he has to.
I think Ananya, till you figure it out, Mr. Kapoor can go ahead.
Right. All right.
Request you, sir, to go ahead, sir, by the time you figure this out, sir.
No, as a matter of fact, one feels honored and happy that there is some family in town which has taken this task of reminding our children, the children who are growing now, who do not know anything about Kanpur and the heritage in the past of Kanpur. So it's a lovely sort of, it's a nice effort on part of everybody who's put into this. And I would like to thank everyone on behalf of all the citizens of Kanpur for having brought this book and given us the knowledge as to what Kanpur was and what Kanpur is today. And let me tell you, I was born after independence, so I haven't really known what happened prior to independence. But whatever little that I've read and I have seen during my stay in Kanpur all this while, Kanpur became Manchester of India due to quite a few reasons. Am I audible, please? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sir. I'm audible?
Yes,
yeah.
we can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah, so what I said was that, you see, initially it was Britishers who came to Kanpur, and a number of times it I get surprised that how come Kanpur was chosen as a place for Britishers to start their business in Kanpur. I can only visualize that since Delhi was the center and from Calcutta Calcutta was the headquarters for them during East India Company and even later. So they probably must have felt that waterways could bring everything to Kanpur, and Kanpur was the only last place rather towards Delhi where they could bring things by waterways. And I'm sure that must have been the initial reason for them to settle in Kanpur. Otherwise, there's no other reason for Kanpur to have grown. Then I think it was the world wars which really brought in focus to Kanpur, like Second World War. A lot of industries which came up, did a lot of work, monopolized in certain industries like cotton, textiles, woolen, so many of them, Lalitli, others, textile industries, even boots, shoes, everything that was being supplied to the army from Kanpur. And that's how we flourished in Kanpur and we put up this huge empire of industry in this town. But unfortunate part is that once the Britishers left, then came a phase where whoever bought these industries had no intention of running them. Their intention was just to make money because everything revolved around money for them. I don't want to name the community because you cannot pinpoint on anybody, but it is basically people who are only interested in money. So their intention was not to put in any money. Let me tell you what happens is number of industries have cycles where 1 year is a losing proposition or maybe 1 year is a profit-making proposition. Let's say sugar industry, 1 year the sugar crop is so good that you get you make money. Second year you make less money. Third year you incur a loss. Fourth year again when the crop comes up, fresh crop comes up, your recovery is much higher and you make money. So, but what they would do, they would put in money in the third year and let the industry survive. And we all know that there is nothing to hide, that there was black money always in circulation at that time. And they would put in that money, take out and put in that money in industry. But people who came to Kanpur who took over from Britishers had no intention whatsoever to run the industry. It was basically to make money. And the intention was not to modernize or put in any kind of effort to let the industry survive. And that's how gradually we have all seen that how they all went into losses, while Ahmedabad and other places which flourished. What is the reason between the two when you compare? Ahmedabad, they put up latest plants, they put up latest technology, they used the latest technology to put up those plants, while we survived on that old antique systems, where we lost on them because we never modernized, we never tried putting up or making changes in the industry. That's how we started losing, and finally they all got nationalized. And nationalization, naturally, once it went into the hands of the government, we all know how the government runs and how the government, and that is the cause of our failure of Kanpur. And I wish some people had continued and carried on the heritage. Lots of our buildings which were constructed by Britishers, they were all demolished one by one. Nobody tried maintaining the heritage, which number of towns like Bombay, if you go to Bombay, they still want to maintain buildings which are over 100 years or whatever period is there. They are not demolished, they are continued. But in our case, we have lost our glory and heritage totally. And I feel very sad and unhappy, or rather, it is something which one feels very sad about, is that our children will not even know what Kanpur was at one point of time. So it's so wonderful that somebody has come up with a book which would probably give them an eye into what Kanpur was and what it is today. Because it is only in history that we'll read about Kanpur and not otherwise. Because the industry that we have today is not the industry which can put us up back in the map the way we were earlier. So my personal, overall, if you see, the gist of the whole matter is that nobody tried doing anything for this city. Name me one person who has done anything great for this town, except maybe JK's in some way put in some trust or whatever, temples or whatever. Rest, nobody has done anything for this town, which is a very, very sad kind of position. Even people who have made money out of this town have never tried putting in anything back into the society or in this or contributed in any way. Not that I'm criticizing anybody, but fact is that we have lost our glory, we have lost our heritage, we have lost everything that we had in this town. I wish that with this book, at least we will be able to have an insight into what happened in this town earlier and where we were and where we are today. Thank you, gentlemen. And I think once again, let me thank everybody who contributed in bringing out this book, including the family of Mehras who have put in so much of effort in doing this. At least there is somebody who's doing something for the city. And let me not, last but not the least, I'm not, Subhashni, don't even take me otherwise, but I think communism was brought in to give support to people, to employees. I agree that at that time when communism came in, the purpose was to let the industry survive by making employees also part of the whole organization. But somehow things have changed over the years.
Bobby, if you want to go to that argument, I didn't say a single word about it.
No, that's why I'm saying.
I'm sorry. This is not.
I'm not criticizing. I'm not. Subhashni, don't take me otherwise. I'm not criticizing anything. I'm saying.
I could have said a lot. I didn't say.
I know. I agree.
Please don't start this.
I'm sorry if I said something. I just said that.
With the right wing.
Yeah. I agree. I fully agree with you.
I will not allow it.
No, that was the. I was saying that was the need of the hour at that time.
That's
what I'm saying.
I think you need to intervene. Yes. And I get that I get that everything is political, but we need to take political debates outside.
Yeah, I agree. No, I'm sorry if I said anything or if I hurt anybody. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Not today, not on this platform, please. Not today, not on this platform, please.
This is what I'm saying now. I'm sorry. Finish. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Just 1 second, Ananya. No question of hurting or anything. I deliberately kept all that out of it. I could have spoken a lot about it, but I felt that this was not. We're talking about Mehra Saab's book, and we're talking about a different subject. We don't have to bring our,
Yes,
political
ma'am, that's true.
affiliations into it.
I agree, ma'am. Ananya, please move forward.
Right. Bridge uncle, thank you so much, Sanjeev uncle. Thank you, Subhashini ma'am. Bridge uncle, I'm going to just ask you to unmute, and please don't press your mic button twice, just once. Just press it once. Just click on it once. On the mic button. Where it says mute, you just have, it would have been unmuted. You just have to click it, it will become unmute. It will become mute.
Bottom left of screen.
Bottom left of the screen, there's a mic icon, sir.
The icon will appear once you touch the screen lightly.
Bridge uncle, I tried calling you. Please pick up your phone. Mr. Seth, uncle, can we have you on? Come forward and speak about it.
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a few words to, as I agree with Subhashini. Yes, there was a time that a lot of cotton got stuck in Kanpur station, which was being transported. I don't exactly remember from where it was. I'm a family friend of the Mehras. Mr. Mehra, S.P. Mehra, considered my mother as his real sister and always addressed her as from her first name. Anyway, we are talking about the history of Kanpur. So she is right that one station master decided that since this cotton cannot be transported and there was huge stock here, so he decided that gather some Englishmen here and ask them to start a cotton mill. And the first mill to start here was Kanpur Textiles, which started using that cotton, and slowly and gradually the more textile mills came in, Elgin Mill number 2, Elgin Mill number 1, and eventually Lal Imli Mill for the woolens. And these mills started especially manufacturing for the military, the khaki and the greens for the military and the army and the police. And then eventually the North Chandni was opened and Flex company was opened. Once upon a time, Flex shoes were the best shoes which were manufactured in Kanpur and famous all over the India. The Flex company used to supply the boots to the army. And of course, the public used these boots and shoes and the sandals, considering them the best in the world. The Kanpur industry actually started closing down after the British left and the outsiders took over the industries, as Subhashini or whoever said, that basically they were interested in making money and not interested in the Kanpur and running the industry. The only family that tried to develop Kanpur and do something for Kanpur was the Singhania family, who built hospitals and other places, the KK temple for the worship and public places. I would say they were the industries in the Kanpur who really did something for this city because they belong to this city. I don't have much to say, and I thank you very much, Ananya, for organizing this History of Kanpur page. It was very, very, very good of you to have done this, and I thank you, Mehra uncle, when he is above there to write about the history of Kanpur. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. I think, thank you so much, uncle. I think we'll have to wrap up the session now and call upon Tariq uncle, because we're exceeding the time limit. It happens to be a weekday for a lot of people. And people are logging off, and therefore I'd really appreciate if we can Nanu, last chance. Do you have anything to speak? Anything to say? You're also on mute.
You'll have to unmute yourself, Babu.
So should I take over from here,
No,
Ananya?
Manu is just saying something.
Okay. Is he saying something?
He's on mute. Veer, can you? Yes.
Yeah, I've already expressed my gratitude to all those people who contributed to this book. Finally, it's been years or years of effort, but finally it has seen the light of day. And I'm so grateful to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Nanu. All right.
Ibrahim.
Your turn. Your turn. Yes. Over to you.
Me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So
Just 1 minute. Just
hi.
1 minute. 1 minute. I saw in the chat box that many people want to know how to get hold of the book. So I think please give them that information also.
Oh, sorry. You just have to send in your addresses. A lot of you have my numbers. I've texted. I have repeatedly pestered all of you, sending the same invitation, asking you for confirmations. So a lot of you have my number. I'd request if you could send your addresses to my number or the email that you received for the invitation, which all of you have received. So whatever is convenient, you please do that, right? Okay, I'll also just put in my number in the chat box. Okay, over to you, Charles.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for. Yes, Mr. Mehra, are you going to say something?
I'm saying Tariq Uncle has to give the
Yeah.
last.
So I thank everybody for joining in, and I think I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Charu Manglek, and I'm the co-convener of Kanpur Intact chapter. And I think maybe we could put some books in Tariq Sir's office so that all those who find it convenient to pick it up from there can also pick up a copy. Now I would request convener Kanpur chapter Tariq Sir to wind up and give a thank you note. Tariq Sir, over to you. Ananya, I think he's also on mute. Ananya, Tariq Sir's on mute.
Yes, I can hear you.
Charuji, can I talk to you for a minute?
Yes, sure, sir.
Hello. Charuji.
Yeah. Yes,
Can
yes,
you
Rajiv
hear
ji,
me?
बोलिए.
Ma'am, one message to Mera family. I think I know Sumat. I met him during Parivartan meetings. And at your insistence, I am traveling from Kanpur to Noida. And I'm on highway catching up with this meeting. Great to hear about the book. I'll read that book. What I want to, I'll come back and contact Sumat that this book should be further converted into a research thesis. Something which I'm working on for last, ever since lockdown, trying to select 30 best works in Kanpur and do a PhD thesis so that be converted into running courses, as Tariq Saab said, that Kanpur University doesn't have those courses. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'll contact Ananya and Subhat maybe in 2 days when I'm back to Kanpur.
Sounds good, Rajiv.
Okay. Thank you, Rajiv ji. Tariq sir, please.
So you'll have to look at the. Yes, perfect. All right.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Respected General L.K. Gupta, our most valued invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. I, on behalf of Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage, INTACT, and the entire team, let me call it Fraternity of Heritage Conservation, who are here together, and my own behalf, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to all speakers and audience for gracing this event. A big thank you to General Gupta for his efforts towards heritage conservation and guiding us on the importance of preserving our rich cultural heritage. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for Mrs. Subhashini Ali for her keynote address, which was very interesting and informative. I'll be grateful to Mrs. Sumita Nanda for giving us good information about the book and the author. My sincere thanks to Mr. Sumat Mehra for giving an excellent welcome address. I also wish to express gratitude to Ms. Ananya Nanda for providing encouragement and planning this event very carefully and very painstakingly. I would also like to thank Mrs. Charu Manglik, co-convener of Intact Kanpur chapter, for conducting this webinar successfully. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, once again, I want to state that we are most grateful to all speakers on this occasion. We thank you for being with us for this book launch. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Darigango.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And yes, Miss Charu is raising the book, and you will all receive your book soon. Yes, thank you so much.
I have a lot of books in the office. Mr. Mehra has sent me, so anybody who's interested, they can come to the office and ring me up. We'll have the books delivered to them.
Right. All right. Thank you so much to Intact, the Kanpur chapter, Tariq Uncle, Charu ji, Anand from the technical team, and everyone else who made this book happen. Thank you so much, and take care, and hope you have a great Diwali and Dussehra and the holidays in general. Thank you so much. Thank you. I didn't do anything. It was, I just sent out the invites. The designing, everything was done by my father and my brother and Mamu to an extent. So yes, they are to thank. So I just sent it out. All right. They gave all the tedious tasks to me, by the way.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And we hope everybody gets a copy of the book.
Good night.
Yeah.
Bye.
Where's the family to stay back to do a quick debrief?
Define family.
Everyone on the Babus.